So now we are going to discuss about Keras and TensorFlow. Um, these are the deep learning libraries that we will be using with in this course completely, uh, and we are going to use Keras with respect to TensorFlow. So this is going to be a good understanding for you to have. So let's understand uh, about TensorFlow first, because this is the main workhorse library Keras uses as its backend. What do you mean by using it as a backend and all? I will just explain you up. Although you need not write any TensorFlow code as such in this course also, or even outside, it's very rare you will be doing it. You will be writing mainly the code in Keras, but a basic understanding will really help you appreciate the simplicity and flexibility offered by Keras. So to give you an idea, uh, TensorFlow is an open source library. Okay, so TensorFlow, okay, it's a open source library, and this is mainly used for numerical computing. Numerical computing related, basically for numerical computing, released and maintained by Google. So a very big company is behind it. In fact, in the recent years, it has gained immense popularity in machine learning community, especially for building deep learning models. Now, we will be using some Python API of TensorFlow, though there could be other APIs as well, like in C and so on. So TensorFlow is designed to run on both CPU and GPU both. Okay, at its core, it's a numeric computation library heavily optimized to perform matrix multiplication operation in a parallelized manner. It is designed in fact, the design is based on the data flow programming paradigm. Internally, it models and stores computation as a directed graph. Okay. Now, let me tell you a few things about TensorFlow from the personal part. TensorFlow, though it's very famous, but it's little typical. Okay, it is little typical in the sense that it's going to be for the first time learner, definitely it's not going to be that straightforward. If you want to learn more into about TensorFlow, you can just type in Google learn TensorFlow and you will get huge number of material. Even there's a material called as TensorFlow for beginner. You can go to that web page and can read that. But still, it's not that simple and straightforward for a lot of people. Secondly, TensorFlow is mainly used for research as well. Like if you want to tweak or customize your code, then TensorFlow is very good. You can play around with that and you will actually enjoy basically playing around with it. Now, because you have a huge flexibility of tweaking the code. Now with this, it's all okay. I mean, it sounds okay that we have basically such a powerful thing, but at the same time, it's really tough also as a beginner to understand the syntax and getting familiarity with it and working with that. So for solving this problem, they came up with Keras. Keras is nothing but, see, this was, let's say, TensorFlow. So what they did is they created a wrapper on top of this TensorFlow and they call it as Keras. So they made this, when you're using Keras at the backend, you're still using TensorFlow. Now, though Keras do not only work on TensorFlow, there is also one more thing called as Theano, but it is now getting deprecated. So you don't need to uh, basically kind of bother about it, because it's Theano is kind of the backend. Basically, you can use it any part, but now it's no more use. So let's not bother about it. TensorFlow is still popular, and now basically since they created this wrapper on top of it, it becomes a lot easy. Now all the development tasks basically use this. You can think of this Keras just like scikit-learn use. Right, in machine learning, we use scikit-learn, so you can think of Keras exactly in the same manner. This is the very good thing about Keras, right? So now, so basically with this knowledge, let's move forward. So it's okay to know about it. So as I said, I will still show you some code so that you can understand it. It's very popular, but you will hardly find yourself kind of writing any code in TensorFlow. Means I have not, I have read a lot of TensorFlow code. whenever I need to understand something, but I have myself not gone much into it and kind of dig down into writing this code, because generally whatever I need, Keras is there always to help me out and solve it. So it's giving you almost everything up, which basically you need to solve this problem. So now, basically what will happen, its design is based on data flow programming paradigm. Internally, it models and store computation as a directed graph. Okay, so it's going to be like a directed graph. So the nodes of the graph is going to represent the computation to be performed. So whatever nodes, basically nodes looks like this, right? And then there are edges. So nodes of the graph represent the computation which you want to perform. The input and output of the node are usually tensors of data. So when I say tensor is nothing but like an array. Okay, it could be like an ND array. Now the edge between the node represent the flow of data. Like you want to do branching, you want to do looping. So it's basically talks about the flow of data. Flow of data or branching, and so on. Now operations are abstract operation which takes in some input and returns some output, like such as it could be like a simple operation like addition operation, it could be like multiplication operation. All these operations you can perform, right? Because as I told you, it's mainly for numerical computation, so you can perform division, multiplication, addition. Let me show you a small snippet of code so that you get an idea how it works. Number one, you need to have an install TensorFlow. So you need to say for this pip install TensorFlow. That's number one. Secondly, you have to say, you need to import this. So you will say import TensorFlow as TF. Now, then you want to declare, let's say, 2 floating point numbers. Now there is something called as placeholder. Placeholder is like memory space where you want to keep something. So you can say x is equal to tf dot placeholder, and you can define like tf dot float 32. Similarly for y also you can define it. So you can say tf dot placeholder, and you can say tf dot float 32, right? So you define x and y, and you are just declaring some space into the memory, nothing else to it. Now you will be doing the product of this. So you can say product is going to be like tf dot multiply, and you are saying that I want to perform this operation. Remember I told you that you can perform some operations on this TensorFlow, and then you do all this in a session. So you have to bind these values of x and y, right? So right now we have not defined any value of x and y, so we need to define it. So the way we define this value, or the way we bind this value, is we say that session is equal to tf dot session, and you can say binding is going to be like x10 y(s)20. So now you have to bind this somehow. So for this you can say again jet, where you want to print out the value. So you can say session dot run, and you want to take product. Remember this part, this was the product comma, you have to feed the dictionary. So you will say feed underscore dictionary, and you're gonna pass this binding to it. Okay, now further to this you can simply say print of jet, right? So as I told you, the other most common alternative to TensorFlow to be used along with the Keras is library called as Theano. Theano is also an open source library developed specifically for training deep learning models. It was done in fact in Canada, but like TensorFlow, it is also heavily optimized to perform fast parallel computations, to extract as much as possible from the available hardware, especially from GPU. But right now we are going to use more of the TensorFlow, as I said, because it's more used rather than going with respect to Theano. So we are going to use mostly the Keras code with respect to TensorFlow. But I hope you got an idea about the code, and if you're not very clear about the syntax, please do not bother about it. As and when we will go ahead, your things will become more and more clear. The intention of this session is to just to give you an idea of what is TensorFlow and Keras, not to basically go into depth and understand it, because these things will happen once we will move to the main sessions and we will start writing all the code. At that moment, you will understand all these things in detail.